Let's get some perspective on this. Brian Abel is CNN correspondent joining us live from the White House. Brian, Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin had this 2.5-hour-long phone call to try and see if they can end the Ukraine war. Why is the White House so hopeful that Ukraine and Russia will make the necessary progress without any kind of third-party intervention or mediation, and that these direct talks will eventually lead them to a ceasefire?
Yeah, Zaka, I think that optimistic really is how this White House is feeling after yesterday's call. President Trump saying later that he believed, quote, something's going to happen. He also said in his Truth Social post about the call that Russia and Ukraine will immediately start negotiations toward a ceasefire, and saying that the tone and the spirit of the conversation were, quote, excellent. So the timeline that Trump laid out, that the negotiations would start immediately, it really hints to this idea that Trump believes progress will be made directly between Ukraine and Russia, and said the Vatican has actually shown interest in hosting negotiations between the two countries. Now, we also know that President Trump, after speaking with Putin yesterday, he called other world leaders, including Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, directly, Zaka.
So tell us a little bit more about that phone call. We know that President Trump spoke with some European leaders, including the French president. President Zelensky of Ukraine was also there. This was right after his conversation with President Putin. Do we know what President Trump told those leaders, including President Zelensky of Ukraine?
Well, so as you mentioned, so after that Putin call, the president did talk with Zelensky directly, and then there was this other conference call, as you mentioned, with other world leaders that included French President Emmanuel Macron, the German Chancellor, Italy's Prime Minister, and as well as the President of the European Union. However, it's not entirely clear if President Trump made any direct warnings to any of the other countries about actions that would delay a ceasefire, such as any additional sanctions against Russia. So that's still unclear. But despite Trump's optimism, he did not discuss a timeline for a possible ceasefire with Vladimir Putin, according to a Kremlin aide. And that really is leaving the question of whether the needle truly has been moved an open question.
All right, CNN's Brian Abel reporting for us this morning there in the U.S. from the White House. Thank you very much for joining us. So we'll wait and see if at all Trump's intervention will lead to some kind of a lasting peace, if not a ceasefire, between Russia and Ukraine, something that President Putin has been loath to try and arrive at with his Ukrainian counterpart.